Welcome to the Mariana Dalto Show, the podcast where we explore strategies to elevate your personal and professional growth. Today, we're diving into the transformative power of meditative arts and how they can enhance focus and awareness. Our guest today is Jeff Patterson, a seasoned practitioner and teacher of meditative and martial arts for over 36 years. As a founder of Northwest Fighting Arts, Portland Tai Chi Academy, and the Yielding Warrior, Jeff has dedicated his life to teaching the art of yielding and its impact on personal growth. He has published 2 books, including The Yielding Warrior, and has inspired thousands through his teachings and online programs. Get ready to discover how the practice of yielding can be a game changer in both martial arts and the everyday life. Welcome, Jeff, to the show.
Hey, thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. Happy to have you. All right, Jeff. So let's talk about share like the story of how you first became involved with meditative and martial arts.
Well, I was doing martial arts for a while, and I used to be very much into Western boxing, and I would go to a boxing gym that was just not too far down the street here from my academy in Portland, Oregon. And at your traditional style boxing schools or gyms, they're a lot different than a regular fitness style class in that it's not one teacher up in front of a classroom leading a group of students. Usually there's a handful of coaches running around, and each one of those coaches might have 3 or 4 fighters that they're working with. Well, at this one particular gym, one of the coaches there was a very well-known boxing coach, and he had created champions in both amateur and professional arena. And I really wanted to get to spend some time with him and train with him, but he was full on his card and wasn't looking for any new athletes. So I would always show up at the gym when I knew he was going to be there and try to get him to notice me, and work very hard when he was around, and just really push myself. And it was about maybe 3 or 4 months of following him around when he finally started giving me some tips and showing me a couple things. And after about 2 weeks of this, he said something to me that changed my life forever. And that he told me, if you really want to be a good boxer, you should start doing meditation and Tai Chi. Now, at the time, I was this 19-year-old kid thinking, isn't that for like older people in the park? How's that going to help me be a better fighter? I had no clue. And I took to heart what he said, and I started doing the practice. And not only has it changed my life in many ways, through the years, I've had over 26,000 students come through my academy and thousands more online. And I've heard hundreds of stories of how the meditative arts has positively influenced people's lives in one way or another. And that's what's made me so passionate about trying to get the message out there, and write my last couple books and create my online program.
That's great. And for the listeners, when Jeff reached out to me to be on the show, I was like, okay, how do we connect this as a business owner, and how does that connect to, for us to be better at what we do? How can that transform the way we're feeling and we're doing things? So the listeners will learn more about that through this conversation. So Jeff, what inspired you to now found this Northwest Fighting Arts and the Yielding Warrior program? What was the foundation of why you wanted to do that?
Well, I've been running my academy here in Portland for over 30 years. The Yielding Warrior program online is only a few years old. And what mostly inspired that was when COVID happened a few years back. We didn't know how long we were going to be shut down. My business was, uh, kind of on a tight wire there for a while. And so we didn't know what was happening. And so at that time, I came up with the idea of writing The Yielding Warrior. And I'd been wanting to write another book again for a while, but that really gave me the time and the motivation. And I set the goal of writing 8,000 words a week for 10 weeks and knock that book out. And in combination with that book, I also created the online program, and that's where it kind of all took off from there.
Okay. And then the boxing went away after like you figured out, like you started learning through meditation. You were like, okay, I'm switching to different.
Oh, we still do here at the academy. We have a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu program. We have a striking program where we do boxing and Muay Thai.
Oh, okay.
We have a youth program, and then we have our meditative arts program, which is what the Yielding Warrior is all about.
Oh, great. So then let's talk about the book. In your book, you talk about yielding as both a martial and a life skill. Can you explain what yielding truly means to the audience?
Yeah, yielding is a concept that I've been uh, very much into for many years. And it's something that I learned originally through the meditative arts, but then I started seeing all of these different correlations and how it can be used in everything we do in life, whether it's your relationships, conversation with business, with pretty much anything you do. And so in yielding, I break it down into three main pillars. There's physical yielding, mental yielding, and emotional yielding. Physical yielding is what athletes use. They use this skill to help improve their performance on the court or the field or in the ring if they're a combat athlete. And in order to use physical yielding, the basic idea is that I push you, you push me, whoever's the bigger, stronger person with the most leverage eventually is going to push the other person over. But with yielding, instead of us trying to see who the bigger meathead is, when you push me, I get out of the way of that force. And so now I can respond with less effort. So I'm not trying to butt heads with you and see if I can overpower you. And that's how smaller, less powerful athletes can get the upper hand on bigger, stronger, faster people. And so it's been used for generations in many different athletic events. In order to be good at physical yielding, a lot of things have to come into play. You need to be well rooted. The lower part of your body needs to be strong and flexible so you can change your central equilibrium without getting tight. The body has to be relaxed, the breath has to be calm, and the mind has to be present. And this is where it starts to become very interesting because while that may take a lifetime journey to really master those skills, from day one, by integrating meditation into your life, you start to see these things with more clarity inside yourself. And that expanded awareness not only helps us be more in tune with ourselves, but it also helps us see these things more clearly in other people. And now we're moving into what I call mental yielding. So, say, for example, you and I are having a conversation and I say something that unsettles you, and I pick up on it on that first sign of imbalance where maybe your energy shifts or a subtle expression change. It's a lot easier at that point to adjust the conversation and keep us in a harmonious place than if I'm not paying attention to that. And pretty soon I'm so far off track, you want to knock me upside the head. And so learning how to use yielding in all of our interactions is extremely powerful. You know, one, we're being more considerate, which is something that we could all do more of. And two, it allows us to be strategic and guide conversations to a positive outcome with the least amount of resistance. And so we can use this in our relationships and business and sales and negotiations. I mean, there's many ways we can apply this. Then the third pillar of yielding is emotional yielding. And emotional yielding is very much like mental yielding, but with our own interpersonal conflicts. So you think about oftentimes something will happen to us and we'll respond and we'll go down this path and we might get an hour, a day, a week down that road and realize maybe that wasn't the best choice. But with yielding and our heightened awareness through practicing the meditative arts, we're able to sit back and be in the moment, not let our emotions take control of our decision making skills, and oftentimes make decisions that save us a lot of heartache on the other side because we're more balanced and stable when we're making these choices. And so, you know, I've been explaining this idea of yielding now for many years, running the academy for over 30 years. And one of the most common things I'll hear people say is, yielding makes a lot of sense. And in fact, I do yielding all the time. Well, I would agree in that I think everybody does some degree of yielding all the time. However, it's kind of like if you or I were to walk into a crime scene with a detective who's been on the job for 30 years. I guarantee you that person would see things about the series of events and the timeline that I know at least I would have no clue of.
Mm.
And yielding in the meditative arts helps us see things inside of ourselves and inside of other people that I truly believe people that don't have a meditation practice will never have any clue of.
Yeah, and that's the part that is difficult to understand. How do you do that? Even if, I mean, I meditate, but I don't think I'm not sure do the yielding or how that works. So how would you explain that to people in order to kind of assimilate the practice in a way where they could see a difference?
Yeah, so it comes with creating a life practice around the meditative arts. And, in any kind of meditation practice, there's five paths that you can follow. There's the physical side, the therapeutic side, the medical side, the philosophical side, and also the meditative or spiritual side. And no matter what reason you're coming to the practice, you might incorporate different things that help in any one of those paths. And as we start building a life practice with the meditative arts, we take things from ritual practices where we set a little bit of time aside every day and do a breathing practice or maybe a Tai Chi form or a Qigong set or some standing meditation, something that you have as like your regular daily routine. And then we have active practices. And these are things that we can integrate into our days because, it seems kind of silly to think that you could meditate for 20 minutes a day and feel all at peace, but then the rest of the day you're stressed out and, scattered. And so these active practices help us weave this mindset and this awareness into everything we do. And then we have the philosophical practices that can be used in our active and ritual practices. And so when we use this model, it starts to expand our awareness and our depth of understanding of what we're doing in ourselves. And that's where some of these philosophical concepts start to come into play, and we start to learn how to integrate these things into our day-to-day activities.
Hmm. So how does these concepts of yielding will apply, to manage stress or even for personal growth? How would you apply this concept?
Many, many ways. So, for example, if you are stressed because something is bothering you, how are you dealing with that topic or that issue that's coming up? Are you meeting it head on and are you trying to power through it? And are you trying to find ways to see it from a different perspective and see a way that maybe you can guide it to the most positive outcome for yourself with the least amount of resistance? And part of this comes from awareness of understanding these imbalances when they first happen.
Mm.
And with any meditation practice, we have what we call the five regulations. They're regulating the body, the breath, the mind, the energy, and the spirit. And briefly, I'll kind of touch on what they mean because I think it will help add a little bit of depth to this answer. And the first is through the meditative practice, by regulating the body, we start to understand our skeletal alignment and our muscular tension. And an example of that would be think about a time maybe when you're sitting down at your computer and your shoulders are rounded forward and you're feeling lethargic and maybe getting a stiff neck. And another time when the most important person in your world walks in the room and your body perks up and you feel like you're on top of the world. Well, these two different energetic states we're in 100% control of all the time. But how are we choosing to express ourselves through our body and through our posture and our awareness that way? And a little bit of a deeper level of body regulation would be maintaining a certain level of flexibility and strength in the body, watching your diet so you're taking in good nutrients, getting enough sleep so we can use that energy in our practice and in our life. And then we have regulating the breath. This regulation is a very deep topic. And in fact, Qigong is often looked at as the science of the breath because there's hundreds of different breathing strategies. And we can do these to get more yin oriented outcomes or bringing ourselves down and being more at peace and more stable, or yang oriented outcomes where we're more aggressive and we have more energy. And so when we understand how to use the breath to get these two different expressions, we can use it in everything we do. And an example of a yin breath would be if you ever listen to somebody sleep, their natural breathing pattern is a longer inhale and a shorter exhale. And this is the body's natural way of bringing your conscious mind into your subconscious mind, which is where we are when we're sleeping and dreaming. And so, if we want to emulate this style of inward energy in our meditation practice, we can do longer inhales, soft retentions at the end of the inhale, and shorter exhales to help bring that energy inward, which helps for reducing stress, with dealing with anxiety, with boosting our creativity. There's lots of reasons why we would do this yin side of the breath. Then we have the yang side of the breath, which is more aggressive. And an example of that would be if you ever had to push your car or pick up something heavy, your natural instinct is to exhale, put tension in the breath, and make it audible. And this is how we generate power and expand the energy. And so once we understand how to use the breath strategically, we can use it to help control our physical, mental, and emotional well-being throughout the day. Then we have regulating the mind. Regulating the mind is a lifelong journey, and it's something that, meditation practitioners are always working on. And one of the things that I've heard beginner practitioners say so many times over is that they've tried meditation, but it didn't work for them because they couldn't quiet the mind. And
Wait, is that me?
no, uh, but that's people get off track and they get misguided and they think about it in the wrong way, because meditation isn't about being in this state of nirvana where nothing bothers you. It's about improving our awareness so we notice these imbalances. So if we're meditating for 20 minutes a day and we recognize ourselves getting distracted and we use our breath, our movement, or the focus to bring us back to center, and we do this 50 times during a session, we just got 50 repetitions of being out of balance and coming back to center. And if you do this every day, every month, every year, you start to develop this power and this ability to find that center in any chaos that comes your way. And so regulating the mind is extremely important. There's this Chinese story that I really enjoy about these two old monks, and they're walking down this dirt road after a huge rainstorm. And they come up to this mud puddle, and on the other side of the puddle is this beautiful little girl, and she's standing there in a white dress and she's crying. And the older monk, he hollers across the puddle and says, "Is everything okay? Can we help you?" And she says, "I need to be somewhere, but if I walk across this puddle, I'm going to get my dress all dirty." So the older monk, he rolls up his pant legs and he walks across the puddle and picks her up, puts her on his back, takes her to the other side, sets her down, and she's off on her way. Well, him and the younger monk are walking a couple miles down the road. And finally, the younger monk is just furious. And he says, "You know, we're not supposed to touch girls, but you did back there at the puddle." And the older monk looks down and says, "You're still thinking about that girl? I left her back there at the puddle." And how many times in life do we need to get 2 miles down the muddy road before we realize that we need to let something go? And
Mm,
the meditative arts helps us recognize these imbalances when they first happen before they gain too much negative momentum. And it's easier to let these things go when we're not so invested in that negativity. And so regulating the mind is a very important part of the practice. Then the fourth regulation is regulating the energy. And this is an extremely deep topic and something that we could talk for hours about. But the basic idea is once you've reached a competent level in regulating the body, the breath, and the mind, you now have the tools to regulate the energy in the body and lead it inward, to extend it outward, to circulate it in the body to get different outcomes. And then the fifth and final regulation is regulating the spirit, which is a very profound idea and something that meditation practitioners will spend their entire life's journey working towards. However, it has applications that we can use from the very beginning with our practice, and that when we think about getting excited, a lot of times when we get excited, the body gets stiff, and we feel those emotions come up. Well, if we can learn how to bring those emotions up or that energy to a heightened state, but stay relaxed and centered, this is how we can perform better in conversations, in physical activities, in anything we do. And so this is a kind of an application of the spiritual regulation for things that we do in everyday life. And so when you understand these five regulations, you see that they're the underlying principles of any meditation practice. And having this conceptual understanding, you can see that it can feed over into anything you do in life.
Yeah, it's just a lot of discipline doing this and understanding each part of it, right? So like let's say like if we were thinking about like let's say is there a way that you can provide maybe an example if how someone can use this yielding strategy in maybe challenging business situations or in personal situations? Because I understand there's different. You kind of need to look at the body, at the mind, and the breathing. But where do you start?
Well, it depends on the situation, right? Because each
Okay.
situation is going to bring a lot of different variables. But to give kind of a general example, is anytime a problem is brought to surface, there's a lot of different ways to deal with the problem, and how we deal with it physically, mentally, energetically, emotionally plays a role into what we're going to take from that problem, if we're going to learn something from it, if we're going to run away from it, or if we're going to make something positive come out of it. Yielding helps us sit back and not let our emotions get involved when these problems come up, and see things from multiple different perspectives and be more aware and more present, so we can lead this problem, if you will, to a positive outcome with the least amount of resistance. And there's millions of applications in how this can be, and so it's hard to like say do A, do B, do C in any one situation, because it's very moldable depending on where you're at in your personal awareness. It's kind of like, if you walk into a room and you're frustrated and you just got cut off in traffic and you're angry, and somebody says hello and you're like kind of almost bark back at them and say hi. Or if you're in a great mood and you just got a new puppy and you walk into the room and somebody calls you a jerk and you're like, yeah, whatever. So the way that you approach it with your mindset is very important. Not only whatever happens with the problem and the other people involved. And so there's really just a lot of options. But the general idea is when you can approach things from a centered, even place where you're not distracted and you're not taken off down any one path, you can perform a lot better and make more educated choices that often save you a lot of heartache.
Interesting. So then how do you maintain that consistency and the motivation really to have this meditative practice, like everyday meditative practice? What can you recommend or advise the audience?
Yeah, one of the hardest things for me being a teacher for over 30 years is teaching people the value in doing a meditation practice every day and why it's important. And through the years, I've come up with three considerations that I find that if people take a little bit of time and thought in these three areas, they're going to be a lot more successful with the practice. And the first one is, what is it that's drawing you to the practice? Why do you want to practice? And not just your surface level why. Are you looking to improve your health? Do you want to watch your grandkids grow up and be more mobile? Do you want to improve your performance on the field? Whatever that is for you. And then once you have that why, then we want to take it a step further and think of 10 or 20 things that will positively change in your life by accomplishing that goal. Maybe it's your interpersonal communication. Maybe it's your relationship with others. Maybe it's your interaction with people on a team if you're an athlete, whatever that is for you. And then I like them to flip the coin. And if they don't accomplish that goal, think of 10 or 20 negative things that will happen if they don't do that. And by putting some thought into this, it builds up some energy and some reasons for staying true to this and keeping on the practice. And that way, tomorrow, when your alarm goes off and you don't feel like getting up and practicing, you start looking at it like a time that you get to go practice because you see so many benefits from this, and it doesn't look like a chore that you got to do every day. And when
Mm,
you can make that mental shift, that's extremely powerful. And then the second consideration is understanding the importance of consistency from the beginning. There's this Chinese story that illustrates this idea really well about this old stonecutter. And he's very well known all over China. He makes these amazing sculptures of animals and landscapes. And he's so well known that when people see his work, they just know it's his because it's almost magical, if you will. And everybody's in awe of his work. Because of this, he has people from all around the country that come and stay with him for a few years at a time to apprentice with him. Every day, this old stonecutter, he starts off his day by walking down to the river and meditating. And one day after his meditation session, he's walking along the river and he had this profound vision of this big 6 foot tall mystical Chinese jade dragon. And he was so taken by this vision that he just knew it had to be his next piece of work. So he spent the next few months traveling all around looking for the perfect stone for his new creation. And finally, when he found it, he brought it back to his place and he just sat with it for a period of time, day in and out, feeling the energy and trying to envision how this dragon would soon appear. Finally, when he began work, he carefully placed his chisel on the backside of the stone and started tapping away with a hammer. Hundreds, if not thousands of times a day, in and out, nothing was changing. A few days went by and still nothing. A few more days went by and his apprentices started second guessing him and wanted to try something else. A few more days went by and finally he tapped the stone and this big 3 foot section came off the backside of the rock and created the smooth, slightly curved line that was going to be part of the dragon's back. And one of his apprentices said, "How did you know that that strike was going to break the stone?" And he said, "It wasn't that strike that broke the stone, it was the thousands of strikes before it." And with a bit of a discouraged tone, the apprentice said, "But I've been watching you and there was no change. Why not try something else? Why keep doing the same thing over and over again?" And the stonecutter got down on one knee and he felt the smooth line that he just created. And he said, "Each strike was not wasted. The stone was changing beneath the surface. And even though we could not see it with the naked eye, not only was the stone changing, so was the one who wields the hammer." And the reason why I like this story so much is because this is the meditative arts. We don't always see the change happening day to day with our breath work, our sitting practices, or our movement practices, or studying these philosophical concepts. But through our consistency and our effort, we lay the foundation to bear these fruits for the rest of our life. And so when you understand the importance of this, this is the second important consideration. And then the third and final thing is you need to find a guide. Meditation is an extremely deep topic. And in fact, I've been studying for 36 years and I'm still just a student that's learning all the time. And if you think that you're going to go sift through the millions of videos out there on YouTube or find this app or this thing or that thing, and you're going to get any kind of depth in your practice, you're wasting a lot of time. You know, we're only on this planet for a short time and your time is valuable. Having somebody in your corner to help point you down the right direction can make a huge difference. And in fact, you know, I've had people come into the academy that have been self-taught 10, 15 years in, and they'll get a little discouraged because they'll see somebody that's only been here for 6 months that has a deeper understanding of the practice because they've had somebody help pointing them in the right direction. And so if you can really put some time into why you want to be drawn to the practice and what's important to you, understand consistency and have somebody in your corner and a guide to point you in the right direction, you're much more likely to be successful with the practice.
I was gonna ask you, what tips would you say to the audience? But one is that getting that guidance, right, from someone who can help you maybe daily with a program or something, some guy. Like if people are listening there for Portland, then they can go to your academy, or if people are in other parts of the country or the world, they can go into your online program, right? So that's the way that you can help them with that guidance. Is that right?
Yeah, so I have my books in my online program. I also have a teacher training program. And so, I'm out there to try to help as many people as I can. So that's, if you like this philosophy and what we're talking about, you can always look me up for that.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Jeff. I appreciate all your insights, your wisdom, your stories. Very, very good stories that helps really understand a little bit more the concepts and how to we can best, start implementing for those that they haven't really had a solid meditation practice. So thank you so much. We will share Jeff's information in the show notes of the podcast. So if people wants to find out more about him, about the book, where to buy the book, I will put all those details in the podcast show notes. Well, thanks, Jeff, again for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And for those that, for the audience, that if you enjoy this episode, please subscribe, share, leave a review, and let's keep exploring personal growth together because this is good for everyone. Thank you so much. See you soon.